Konnichiwa everyone. Check that out. That is some nice semi-straight dug fir that is going to become a new and much larger and much improved planing board. This is going to be a pretty simple project. I've learned a lot from the previous one that I made. It's actually a little too small and a little too stubby for my current needs. Got a couple of big projects in mind, and big projects require bigger tools, and that includes a bigger planing board. But I've also got some cedar that we're going to use. This thing is going to be quite a bit bigger than the previous iteration of the planing board. This thing's about 48 inches. For geometrical types, that's about 48 inches in millimeters. So it's pretty clear on this side. There's some knots on the other side of these boards, but I'm really not too worried about it. I'm going to do a couple of inlay things with this. I'm thinking we're going to do some butterflies across the top there to help keep it straight. Should be a pretty cool looking thing when it's all said and done. But the first order of business is to do nothing, because these need to sit and dry out. I'm going to let this go for as long as possible. I don't want to delay working on these big projects too much. But anyway, let's check back in a bit and we'll see what we got. I'm getting kind of excited for this one because this is going to be a really fun build. Alright, so through the power of editing, our boards are ready to be jointed. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take off this little rounded bit here. There's a good bit of glue surface there, and I want as much as possible for this thing. Alright, one down, two to go. Alright, so I don't have a straight edge that's 4 feet long, so I'm going to have to rely on my eyeballs for this one. But it's got a little bit of a hump on the middle of that one, and a little bit of a weeble wobble on this one. This one right here seems to be okay, but just got to put a little bit more work into these. We should be ready for some glue up, but I am glad to be making some shavings on this, because every little shave is a little bit of progress. Alright, that is much better. Just a little bit of extra work, and we are in much better shape than we were before. So this wood actually smells a lot more like pine than it does Doug fir, but I'm not too worried about it. If it works, you know. Gotta use what you got, and that's what we got. So just doing a little bit of gravity joining here. It's easier to do it like this than it is to do otherwise. A few small little gaps that we gotta take care of still with this board. But I don't know if you can even see that. Yeah, there we go. It's a little bit there, just right along the middle we gotta take out. And once that's done, should be ready for some glue. So we have come to the point where we need to put some glue on these guys. Just a nice little dab all the way down. I think ought to do just fine. I decided to use fish glue for this because I'm getting kind of tired of Titebond, but fish glue works pretty much just like hide glue would. Just a protein glue. Should hold just fine. Here's to adventure. Last thing I want to do is glue these to my sawhorses here. Whoa, see that? See that clamp bending there? So just cleaning up the excess glue here. I'm gonna let this sit overnight, check back in the morning, see what kind of result we got. Next day, next set of problems. Got ourselves a nice board. The glue up went fantastic. Had very few gaps in that. Okay, so for the legs on this thing, I'm actually going to use some of this cedar that I've had around. This is actually left over from when I made the sawhorses a good while back. Man, it's almost been a year. Kind of hard to believe. Alright, so I got our legs here for this guy. We're actually going to use the exact same method that I used on the previous planing board, that is the sliding dovetail to attach these. However, with these, I'm actually going to glue them in place because I don't want them moving. On the other one, they started to move a little bit as the weather shifted. I mean, it kind of really doesn't matter as long as they're staying in place, but with this one, I really want this to be as stable as possible. I want this to be as strong as possible. So we're going to do a sliding dovetail all the way across this section here. Slide that into place like so. Should be an easy done deal. Cedar is really chippy. It's not really coming out very clean, so. But no one's going to see this part of it. Doesn't really matter. A wise man once told me, nobody has to know what nobody has to know. Alright, so good bit of fitting and testing. Let's give this a shot. That's in there fairly solid. It's still pretty tight. Let's back it out. Trim it up just a little bit more. Alright, that is a done deal. That is not going anywhere anytime soon. Alright, so rather than leave the foot flat across the entire length, I'm actually just going to take my little sorikana here, and I'm going to cut a bit of a relief right in through here, so that the only thing I have touching the ground is this side, and then the other two on the other foot. It'll make it a lot easier to keep it stable, and plus, it might look kind of cool too, you know, kind of a city gate sort of feel. I think that ought to do it. Decent height, it's about a ½ inch, maybe a little bit lower than that. If this one does break eventually, I can always make another, but it's in there pretty solid, so for all intents and purposes, that is actually a completed planing board, but I wanted to do one extra thing to it. If you recall a little while back, I did some work on a kana, and what I did was basically did a butterfly spline over the entire length of it, kind of going this way just to hold a crack closed. I'm going to try that same kind of ideal with this, and the whole concept would be to try to keep this thing straight over the long term as the wood moves and as the wood kind of settles in. And so, I'm just going to try it with this cedar here. Not going to go too deep into it. I don't want to lose any thickness on this thing. But I'm going to give it a shot. It might look kind of cool too. It's going to be a nice little contrast on there. And just for a reference of the visual variety, this is what I'm talking about. So if you can imagine having 3 of these dead across the length of that. Just that little fill right there. This has actually turned a nice kind of a bronzed color since we last saw it on the channel here. So that's what we're going to do. Just a little spline across the length. 3-way going down like that. Not too deep. We'll see how it works. I'm kind of interested to see the result. Also, just a little tip whenever you're cutting these kind of chochu butterfly things. I call these chochu, I guess you can call them butterfly splines. You know, there's no like official term that I've found for it anyway. When you're cutting these, make sure that this is cut first, and then whenever you cut your actual recess for it, that it's a little bit inside the line there. You can see I've left that pencil mark. So whenever you tap this thing in place, you can actually compress the wood down to get a really tight fit. You don't want the pressure to be going this way. You always want the pressure to be going this way so you don't split whatever it is you're using the fill on. And I like to go through and just sort of roll the corners off with a file or a chisel or even a small plane. It just helps it go in a little bit easier. Fitting later, we are going to drench this guy in glue, and we are going to get this installed. So I've compressed the edges of the fill enough to where it will fit very snug, which is not a bad thing. Once it's in there, I'm going to hit it with a little bit of water, try to expand that wood back out. Here we go. Should be fairly tight enough that I should only have to oh yeah, check that out. Now that our inlays have dried completely, we can saw off the excess and keep going. We are nearly done, ladies and gentlemen. My balcony reeks of cedar, and we are very close to being done with this guy. Only one last thing to do in this to make the stop. I actually had a little cedar stop made, but I broke it, so got to make a replacement. Luckily I have a little piece of ash here. Should work just fine. I actually decided not to do a third inlay down here because I've actually got this, and I'm going to glue this in, and this actually should serve as a pretty decent stabilizer. I added a little reinforcement on the bottom down there too. So we're going to get the stop cut, then we're going to get it installed, and we should be done. I'm going to be very glad too because it is very hot today. We've had a string of 98, 96 degrees Fahrenheit days. I'm looking forward to a little air conditioning. So I modified my original design by just a little bit. Instead of doing a full sliding dovetail, I'm just going to do a half dovetail. So that means that only one side is, slightly angled and the other side is flat. Just wanted to do that just for the sake of moving this thing in and out. And plus I hadn't cut one before, so I just wanted to see how it would turn out. So let's get this guy installed and see what we got. Oh yeah. Nice and heavy duty. I am very, very happy with that. So the absolute last thing we're going to do here, a little bit of Danish oil. This is my favorite part of the entire process. We're just going to apply a little bit liberally on here. Even though they're common woods, I still like those colors quite a bit. I'm a big fan of natural and unaltered wood in its all natural glory. That's basically what we got going on here. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a completed giant planing board. I am a very happy camper right now. So I think it goes without saying that this was a huge, huge, huge project, but I'm very glad that it's done. For size reference, you can see my original planing board there on the left. Still going to get some use out of that. I mean, it's great for small projects, but I think the majority of my work is going to be on the big guy now. Wanted to mention too that this is the first project that was paid for entirely by the patrons on Patreon. You guys are awesome. So thank you, patrons, for providing the lumber for this project. Could not have done it without you guys. I got some huge projects in mind that are going to be coming down the pipeline, and they're going to be a little bit easier with a little bit more space to work with here. If you want to support the channel and you like projects like this, make sure you check out the link to the Patreon in the description box down below. As always, thanks for watching. Have an awesome day. Domo arigato. Jamatane.